Mr. Greg Monfort.
Thank you.
Well, I'm excited because, number one, we're going to have a good time today, and I think we're going to drink some wine off the top of here, so that's always good. Secondly, we're going to hear from some incredible entrepreneurs, and the way the format will run today is very simple. We will hear from our entrepreneurs pitching their ideas, primarily to the judges up here on this stage. We will have some interactivity here with some Q&A after about 15 minutes of hearing from them. Then we will open it up to you in the audience to ask some questions as well. So we want to keep this as lively and interactive as possible, so do keep your questions in mind. Write those down, because at the very end of the program we'll be able to get to some of those. We hope you have a good time. We hope you're inspired. I know this is a big day for a lot of these entrepreneurs. Later tonight we will be actually honoring these entrepreneurs and announcing the overall winner at the Bravo Awards, which I will be at as well, and I think we're looking forward to that too. Let's let the fun begin. And our first finalist to present the business plan today for this kind of Shark Tank-like presentation is Branch Out Cider. Branch Out Cider is making something great out of local apples, as you can see here. After 4 years of the annual neighborhood ritual of collecting apples and making their favorite beverage, Matt Fader and Aaron Fodge have decided to introduce their apple wine and this community orchard project, which I'm anxious to hear more about, to a much broader community here in northern Colorado. Branch Out Cider basically will collectively unite apple trees throughout the northern Colorado region to produce an exquisite apple wine with a fresh apple fragrance that's unique to this part of the country. Matt and Aaron are pretty excited to start production of the inaugural batch of apple wine during the 2012 harvest season. You can learn more about them right now if you'd like to on their website. They've got one, branchoutcider.com. And again, we're looking forward to the samples. So please welcome them here on the stage. Give them a round of applause, you guys.
All right, well, my name is Aaron Fodge, and this is Matt Fader. He is going to be your urban orchardist for today. He's going to help get you prepared first. All right, great. Well, we'd like to start with some thank yous. This has been quite a journey through this challenge, and we'd like to start off with a couple thank yous. So, Hill Grimmett from Be Local, Northern Colorado. Don Filmy, Professor at Agribusiness from the Colorado State University. Doug Caskey from the Colorado Wine Board. Arnie Culver from the Small Business Development Center. Holly B. Weaver, thank you if you're here for that great press release. The Mantooth marketing team, thank you very much. That's been great. And of course, the Monfort College of Business. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this competition. So, we're going to start with a story. And this story starts in 2007. And we had a neighbor. This neighbor had this glorious tree, and it was full of apples. And we're like, hey neighbor, any chance we could pick some of those apples? So we said, well, you know, my wife's going to want a couple of those for a pie, but you can have the rest. We soon discovered that more and more neighbors were like, hey, you know, we've got the same dilemma. We've got a tree, it's full of apples, but nobody wants them. So we thought, well, hey, all right, we'd be interested in those. So we said, let's decide, maybe we'll press some cider. That same year, we held the first annual Apple Fest. And our neighbors came over, and we celebrated the collection of those apples by pressing them into cider, recognizing that, hey, we've got this nice collective effort of neighbors that were donating these trees and their apples to us. Our front yard cider soon became something else. It became an exquisite apple wine. We learned that we could make a premium product from those apples thanks to our neighbors. It was a great thing. We were really content and really happy. And we were relieved, our neighbors were relieved to know that their apples were being put to a good use. So after about 2 years, we had an epiphany.
What if we could unite those apple trees into an orchard that would serve as a supply for a local cider business?
It was as if we had an orchard right in our yard, right there in our neighborhood that it was going unused. It's like, well, how many apple trees might exist in this orchard that we have? So Matt and I hopped on bikes, and we rode around North Fort Collins, and we counted over 160 apple trees in the backyards of our neighbors in the northwest quadrant of Fort Collins. We thought, okay, maybe we have an idea here that's validated, and maybe we should look into moving forward with that. We also learned that northern Colorado has a rich history in apples. Matt's going to tell you a little bit about that.
We learned that Arthur Gibson, the early postmaster of Union Colony right here in Greeley, Colorado, is also known for planting the first apple orchard. We also learned that settlers to the region began planting apple trees as a local source of reliable food. Remnants of these trees still exist today throughout our northern Colorado cities.
Matt's going to show you a map now. This is a map of those 160 trees that we found while we were riding around that northwest quadrant of Fort Collins. We estimate there are 800 to 1,000 apple trees in the backyards of the residents of northern Colorado.
We also discovered that the vast majority of these trees go unpicked year after year. We learned that we have a dependence on foreign apples in our country. USDA estimates that 80% of the apple juice and cider consumed in our country comes from outside of our country. Yet we have a source of local apples right here in northern Colorado.
So let's assume we have 400 of those apple trees in what we're calling the community orchard. That would yield almost 56,000 pounds of apples, 3,100 gallons of cider, and over 15,000 bottles of apple wine, our product. We validated our idea. We felt sure that we should move forward and try and make this into a business when we discovered these trees. So that brings us to where we are today. We are Branch Out Cider. We are a local business. You know, we want to bring value to those backyard apples, those forgotten apples across northern Colorado. We want to make a premium product from these apples. We want to make a product that the community is also proud of. So, Matt's going to talk a little bit about our marketplace. Oh, sorry. Sorry, he's going to talk a little bit about our relationship with our apple owners. Matt.
So here's how it works. Let's take my neighbor, for example. We'll call him Mr. Rogers. He's got a beautiful apple tree. He's a busy guy. He works hard. And he doesn't have time to pick his apples, let alone do something with them. We would sign him up as a member of the community orchard that would supply our apples. We would pick his apples, process them into apple wine, and then as a member of the community orchard, we would give him first opportunity to purchase our apple wine at a discounted price. The remainder would go for sale in the northern Colorado marketplace. So each step along the way, from collecting the apples to pressing cider to making apple wine, we add value to these apples that were once a menace to my neighbor's lawn.
So what's in it for the apple tree owner? Why would they want to contribute to the community orchard project? Well, first, Matt's already mentioned, they're going to have a clean yard. We're going to come in, we're going to take their apples, we're going to keep their yard clean, and we're going to put those apples to good use. Second, they're going to have an opportunity to purchase our product at a discounted rate. They're contributing to our effort, and we're going to return that favor by offering them the first opportunity to purchase our each year's sales cycle, the opportunity to purchase our apple wine first at a discounted rate before we go to the public to sell it. Third, we're going to throw a party. We want to recognize these folks. We want to build camaraderie amongst the tree owners, and we want to recruit more tree owners in the process. We're going to throw an event every year to commemorate these folks donating their apples and contributing them to our effort. So we hope that that's a good reason to get people moving forward. Matt, will you talk a little bit about something for our company?
So in addition to the benefits that Aaron's mentioned for the tree owners, we want to do something that gives back to the community. we'd like to develop a grant that will be offered to the community to support the study and promotion of urban agriculture and local food networks. We see great opportunity in the research of this field and want to promote that. We would dedicate 10% of our sales for those first 2 years of startup towards establishing this grant fund.
Thanks, Matt. All right, well now we would like to introduce our product to you. I have some good news, I have some bad news. The good news is we have our product. The bad news is we do not have a license yet to actually distribute for tasting locations. So, we are going to kindly ask you to observe the wine. We will pour it in your glass. If you would sniff it and look through it and observe it. Unfortunately, we can't ask you to taste it today, especially with that film running there.
Is there any law enforcement here?
We're on video.
We're a little concerned that when we apply for a license that we might have some issues if we throw this out as a tasting center. So, please, please smell. Grab it. Look.
If we decide to drink it, that's not a big deal. You just can't tell us to drink it.
As long as that camera's got me saying something politically correct, it's all good. Well, let's talk about our product. Our product is apple wine. It is a blend of local apples, tart, sweet, bitter, that come from the community orchard. The alcohol content will somewhere be between 7 and 9%. It's a seasonal product, so much like wine, every year is going to be a little bit different. You know, it's going to be that blend of apples that contributes to its unique flavor on a year-to-year basis. It'll be semi-dry. It's meant to be served cold. It's meant to be served. We will sell it in wine bottles, and hopefully it's something that you all want to share with your friends on a warm summer day. So, Matt will introduce you to our marketplace.
Our marketplace is northern Colorado. The cities of Greeley, Loveland, Fort Collins, and Estes Park. This defines the region that we plan to serve as our customers. It also defines the region that we plan to develop the community orchard and serve as a supply for our cider business.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Our apple wine, we hope, will be successful because of the convergence of 3 trends in northern Colorado. The first one is the craft beverage industry. People in northern Colorado are curious. They're willing to try new beverages. We know this because of the craft beer industry. Obviously, we have a Colorado wine industry. You may not even know that, but the Colorado wine industry is booming. And there's also distilleries popping up all over northern Colorado. The Colorado Wine Board tells us that they've seen double-digit growth year after year for the past decade. We're not exactly Napa Valley here, but it speaks to what our customers want. The second is locally produced food. People in northern Colorado want to know where their food comes from. Why do we know this? Well, the growth in CSA's, community-supported agriculture, and farmers markets across the region. We see this all over the place. Our product is locally supplied, locally produced, and it'll be locally sold. The third one is apple wine is gluten-free. For those that are looking for a gluten-free diet, this is something that we can add to their menu. This is something that we can add to their beverage selection that they may not have had before. So we believe that the convergence of those 3 trends will make us successful in northern Colorado. So, as we start to close, this is not a story about Matt and I in his front yard. It's not just about us pressing cider in his front yard. It's about a business plan and seeing that business plan to fruition. We've had a great time already in this competition. We'll share with you that we're a low-risk startup. Our startup costs are very low. If our sales estimates are right, by our second year we should become profitable. Thanks to this competition, we've already set up a business entity. We've got our bank account. We've got a prototype logo. And I'm happy to announce that Matt, just yesterday, got his first bit of junk mail. So I'm really happy about that. All right, so I'm going to let Matt give his blows with what the future might look like.
So in closing, we'd like to change how people view their backyard apple tree from something that's a menace to their lawn to something that connects them to a great local product. We want to demonstrate that agriculture can succeed in an urban environment. And lastly, we want to add value to these local apples and start to begin to realize the benefit and the potential of urban agriculture in northern Colorado.
Thank you again to the Monfort School of Business. We really appreciate this opportunity. We'd like to share with the judges that Matt and I make a great team. Our skill sets are different, but they complement each other very well in terms of how we might move forward in a business. We have a passion for apples. We believe northern Colorado is primed for a local craft cidery. All of you, help us. Help us bring value to those apples, those forgotten trees across northern Colorado. Help us introduce apple wine to northern Colorado. Help us put our roots in the ground as we branch out into your communities across our region. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Matt and Aaron, thank you. Let's open it up here for questions from us. Al, you guys want to start? You can use the microphone there. Congratulations, too, by the way, on getting here. Thank you for bringing the product to us today. All right. So first off, I think it's really interesting. Very novel approach. Your inventory is interesting. It's a low-cost way to get your inventory. I have a couple questions relative to, in your inventory accumulation, it does raise some concerns for me relative to scale and the ability to address the market, supposing something happens. So I'd like to kind of hear from that perspective. The other piece is about distribution and how you really think through about the distribution, because it could materially impact whether you do this or not. And then lastly, as I look through the financial statements, as an investor, looking at the scale of the business, it's hard to get overwhelmingly excited about something like this, other than I think there's great potential out of the business, but the business plan doesn't necessarily look to take advantage of that potential.
Okay.
And so if you could address those for me, that would be great.
Let's maybe start with the last one first. We have to validate an idea. We were very conservative with our business plan, and that was for a reason. We were conservative with our estimates for the amount of apples that we could obtain. We were conservative about the yield that each pound of apples might produce apple wine. We were also conservative in terms of the number of trees that might be out there. We think all those things have been conservative. So it may knock down a little bit in terms of maybe your excitement about what the future lies, but I think when you have the burden of proof of having to sell an idea that's brand new, working with these community orchards or these community suppliers, I think that's part of the challenge. So I think we were conservative for sure. In terms of distribution, and Matt, please jump in. In terms of distribution, we're going to experiment. I mean, that's the beauty, I think, of our first year, is that we have the opportunity to experiment with a couple different avenues. One is community-supported agriculture. We would like to work with the CSAs across northern Colorado to add our product as one of their potential offerings through their CSA. So that's one channel for certain. When we are licensed in northern Colorado, we will also have the opportunity as a small cidery or small winery to have 5 locations where we can put on tastings throughout the year. Those can be farmers markets, liquor stores, so on and so forth. So we're going to experiment with distribution. I can tell you, being in part of this competition, we've already heard from some folks, which has been really kind of exciting, from some small businesses asking about us about distribution opportunities.
We also see the growers of the trees as an opportunity to kind of spread the idea and you know, see where the potential can go on that. To the question about when we cap out in terms of supply, we've talked a lot about that. You know, if things really took off, we think we could. That would be an issue. You know, we've looked at potentially partnering with Western Slope Apples and making you know, a combined version, as well as there's potential to plant more apple trees in northern Colorado. It's been proven that it can be a region that can grow apples. There's a couple orchards kind of getting started in the region, and I think there's great opportunity in that as far as providing more for our supply.
Did you have I just have one follow-on. Thank you. I appreciate. Looks like you thought about it, and so that helps me with the evaluation. The other piece is, have you looked at, you know, assembling an advisory board to help you in, you know, maybe coming out of this craft beer force or something like that that may have an interest in alternatives? I know that there's an association for craft beers that's headquartered actually out of Denver or Boulder. You know, there's a number of different places where you may be able to get resources that could help you through your learning curve. And have you guys explored those?
Well, as we started our presentation with those lists of thank yous, we went to the Colorado Wine Board, we went to the Agribusiness Department at CSU. We've actually selected a lawyer that used to be the lawyer for the Wine Board. So certainly we're in an advantageous environment where we have a lot of these, you know, great folks in the community where we might be able to leverage those relationships to help us through. Certainly we're starting a business, so in terms of maybe potentially having a board that might be able to help out in that way, we started that process, yes.
Great. Courtney, do you have a question?
I do. Okay. Just sort of logistical question. First of all, I do think this is a great idea, and you're coming in it at a great time when people are so focused on wanting to support local businesses, and I love that you're using a product that otherwise goes wasted. In terms of a representative from the craft brewing industry, yay, we're happy that you want to do this kind of thing. I think it's really great, and certainly knowing a lot of people who are on gluten-free diets who won't drink my beer, they would be able to enjoy this beautiful cider.
We didn't say that.
So my question is more logistical. Who is actually going to pick the apples and crush the apples and make the cider? And I see that you have made some, and do you have any kind of background in fermentation science? Do you have someone who can help you with things that might go wrong? Because certainly plenty of things can go wrong with fermentation.
Let's start with the collection. Matt and I will do the collecting in the first 2 years of the business. We have, again, as you've noted, we've set our goals maybe a little bit lower in terms of the number of trees we want to go after, but we want to validate this idea before we grow too big. Is the potential for it to run off and screen? Yes, but we will do that. So we think it's based on our previous experience. We believe over the 3 to 4 months that you can collect the apples. The apples don't all just come in October. They really start in August and go all the way through to November. So we believe that we can space that out appropriately at this time to collect those. You want to add anything to that?
Sure. I think there's potential of other opportunities to hire folks that would help us pick those apples. We really want, in their first year, we want to establish a relationship of trust with these apples, these apple tree growers, and you know, so they have a trust that we're entering their property and we're taking care of their property and that we're going to do something responsible with it. So, but beyond that, there is the opportunity to expand that.
Okay. And then in terms of brewing, well, I started with beer and went to mead, honey wine, and then with the cider. So I mean, we've been doing this, like a lot of people, certainly relying on the folks in the community. We recognize that as an advantage, having folks with with this educational background in our area. So one of the things we think is in our advantage is that apple wine is better with the blend of apples. Yet it doesn't have the strict, brewing instructions maybe that beer does in terms of a boil and so on and so forth. It's if you can keep it clean, and if you can collect those apples when they're at peak readiness, we believe that we can make a good product. And we will learn. I'm sure of that.
Courtney, anything else? You go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that yes, we will learn. We've kind of throughout our careers in the community have been dedicated to continuous learning, and there's obviously a lot of mentors in the community in terms of brewing and wine that we hope to learn from. So.
Excellent. I have a couple of questions, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. So get ready for your questions here in just a minute. I have a question on the market side, on the distribution side, and then just sort of a passion side of this. So let's talk on the market side, and forget my ignorance here, but how big is the market for apple wine in particular? I see what you're talking about with the craft beverage business, but hone it in for me for wine, and in particular apple wine, if you can.
Well, let's speak to wine first, because that's really what we have evidence for. As you know, or may not know, apple wine is predominantly made on the coasts. So it's the Northeast, the Northwest. If you look down, we'll have a map that's in our business plan. You can see where the cideries are. They're not in our half of the country.
And the heart of my question is, and I'm sorry to interrupt, the heart of my question is, given the fact that we are not as culturally accepted to apple wine, is there a market here for this?
Well, certainly, I mentioned the numbers for wine in Colorado. So it's booming. How many wineries are in the Front Range? What would you guess?
Oh, there's about 100, isn't there?
There's like 50 just along the Front Range, and then obviously we have a lot of the western slope. That was a key point for us to see that the market here was able to support 50 wineries in an area that's not known as Napa Valley, like I mentioned earlier. At the bigger level, you're starting to see some of the big breweries get into the lower end cider product. Miller just purchased Crispin, thank you. Just purchased Crispin. They're out of Minnesota. Minnesota. So we're seeing some of the bigger players try to get in for the cheaper, $5 bottle stuff. So we think the market's ready. We think these three trends are why. But that is the burden of proof. And again, I'll speak back to your point that we need to prove this idea. We need to prove that we can get this supply, but we think these are the three reasons why people will respond in the marketplace. It's unique. He calls it food curiosity. People in northern Colorado have a food curiosity. They want to try new things. Tell a story about your dad.
Yeah, I think people we've thought a lot about this in terms of the market, and I think back to when my dad came to Colorado as a grad student, and he fell in love with a beer in Golden, Colorado, and then I came to Fort Collins in the early '90s and fell in love with Fort Collins beer, and look how far we've come in the beer industry, and we think people will begin to acquire a taste and develop a culture of cider lovers in the area that Northern Colorado is unique to. So that's what we do.
And I'm assuming, I remember in the business plan, you've got contingencies if we have a bad year, if there's a bad crop out there, you've got backup plans.
Do you want us to address it real quick?
Real quick, yeah.
These estimates, so the numbers I gave you in terms of yields, an average apple tree is about 800 pounds of apples. We used 100, 150, and 200 pounds as our split to figure out our yield. 40% to 100, 40% to 150, and then 20% to 200. So we're way under. We're figuring these trees may not be in the best shape.
Yeah.
And that's part of our work to work with them. We also estimated yields, 12 pounds of apples for a gallon. We used 18 pounds.
Okay.
So we're very conservative.
Got it.
And we didn't think we would be doing the business plan justice if we tried to make those estimates sound better. So there's potential.
And to Brad's point a little bit too, and as an investor coming in, because your startup costs are how much?
Well, it's about 20.
And really, that's great. Very inexpensive to kind of get into this whole thing.
Yep.
The returns are very low as well. And as an investor, I'm probably going to want a little more. And I'm probably going to want a little more aggressive marketing expansion too. So why would I want to come in and say, okay, maybe give you 3 to 5 years of my capital, but I'm not going to get a whole lot back in the first 3 to 4 years probably?
Well, the person that's going to want to invest with us is going to want to invest in this new idea that Matt described, this urban agriculture idea. Yes, we're bringing an apple wine to the marketplace, but we're also proving a different idea. Can an urban environment be a place where you can conduct agriculture? And so I appreciate that the first couple of years may not be a high-tech startup where we're cranking in millions of bucks, but we also think it's a viable idea that might spin off other ideas. So the investor in our company is probably looking for an agricultural investment.
And we get to go to the parties, right?
Yeah. We're all invited to the parties. And I would just say, we see it as a responsible way to start a small local business and have it grow from there. So, we're just taking it one step at a time. We want to be adaptable and flexible in where things go. And hopefully it'll be very successful.
Right.
So I just wanted to follow up on that a little bit. Beyond us as investors, you as an executive team, does it create the right kind of returns and growth for you to quit your day job and jump into this 100%, so that an investor would feel like, we're not going to just go see this through a couple of years, realize it's kind of hard work, make just a little bit of money, but it's not worth it?
Well, we've committed to 2 years. We will have, we are providing the labor those first 2 years. Again, I'll speak to, yes, we were conservative in our estimates. There's no question that we were conservative. We think there's a lot more potential than maybe we've even displayed for you. But we're being honest about, this is a new idea. So we get past those first 2 years, yeah, everything's on the table in terms of what we would consider.
Good. Excellent. Any more questions before we move to the audience? Let's move to the audience for a couple of questions now. And do we have a microphone out here, or should I? I'll come out here. This is good. Okay. Raise your hand really high.
I'm really loud. I don't need one.
Oh, that's okay. Stand up and tell us your name and what your question is.
Hi guys, my name is Kirsten. My question is, you talked about for giving back to your producers of the trees, giving them a discount on the wine. What are you going to do if they are not wine drinkers? What if they do want to get involved in this, but they just don't like wine, they don't like the product? How are you still going to appeal to them?
Well, on the marketing side of this, we really haven't gone too much there in this presentation, but we think this will be fun to be a part of. We're going to do things like, we're going to ask them to nickname their tree. And we want to create a creative competition between our tree owners to see, hey, if the tree's maintained, how good is Charlie producing this year? We think there might be some creative ways to do that. I think the straightest answer, and you can help me too with this, is, look, a lot of these apples are just going unused. So, we're providing a benefit, and they're able to take credit for it, and they're able to say that they're a part of this effort without a lot of effort. Does that help answer your question? Do you want to add something to this?
Okay, good. Any other questions from our audience? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Tim Kenny. I was just wondering, 2011 production, how did that compare to the last 5 years from your perspective as you put this all together?
Well, as a business, this is our first year, so we've been, backyard.
I'm sorry, I just wondered about apple production in your market. Were there lots of apples on the trees? Were there few apples on the trees?
I would say 2 years ago there was, 2010 was a huge year, and 2011 was a little bit less. One of the things that's attractive about the community orchard is that we're not having to go out and buy this piece of property. And if that piece of property is in the wrong spot, the wrong year, and it gets that hailstorm, well, guess what? That monoculture there of trees is now shot. The beauty of the community orchard is we spread them out all over the place. Not only so they can escape the weather, but they can also escape disease and not have mutual diseases. So that's one of the benefits of having them spread out. It was a better apple year in 2010, for sure, but 2011 was fine too.
Yeah, I mean, as we were riding around our neighborhood looking for trees, it was hard just to ride down an address and see a tree just full of apples and you didn't have anything to do with it. The other thing that we want to do is collect data on these trees. This is a GIS map. And we want to log those trees year after year with the variety, the yield, the how much apples they produce, and begin to learn from these apple trees. So we can answer that question over time, I think.
We have time for a couple more questions. There's someone over here on this side. Yes.
I'm Sean. With the different pesticides and processes, how, if at all, will you have access to guarantee the safety of the apples? And how are you, during their growth process, until you take possession of that?
Well, we have the benefit of being able to be picky and choosy about the apples that we use. Part of that data collection process is to know year after year, when they're actually fruiting the best. Our product will be made into, as we talked about on this one, it'll be 7 to 9% alcohol content. There is a level there that between like the lower end ciders and below 5%, the level of having that higher alcohol content will help decrease if there's any sort of, what do you want to call it, infection or whatever you want to say, but bringing the alcohol content up will help that for certain. It's a relationship, and if the folks have a tree that's not well maintained, certainly that's something that we can choose if we'll work with them or not. We will not be an organic product because of, I think, probably the nature of what you described. So with pesticide use, that's your job.
One last question. Are there any other questions that you all have? If not, do you gentlemen have any closing remarks you'd like to say?
I think we're just glad to be here and excited to speak to people afterwards.
It's a different idea. I don't know if we want to call it a paradigm shift. That may be a little too large to make there. But the idea of working with your neighbors and adding value to an urban environment, we think the apple trees are just one way to do that. You're starting to hear people where they're sharing out gardens. There's different ways that an urban environment can be agriculturally strong. So we think we'll be a part of that. Thank you.
Matt Narrow with Branch Out Cider. We are going to take a quick 15-20-minute break. We will reconvene here at 1 o'clock, and we'll hear our next presentation. Thank you.